conversation, having just the desire to talk about this, because when it happened to me, I really felt like it fell on deaf ears. And I realized that it probably did, because it's not really illegal. So even though we filed a report and we talked to the police about it, never really went anywhere other than that. Other than the police officer did call me back to say that they had received several reports on the same person. Pretty much they had a history of this. But this was a normal day for me. I was riding in the car with two of my daughters. They were in the front seat. I was in the back seat. And you all are speaking of pics, which are bad enough. That's plenty bad. Anything unwanted is a huge violation, and an unwanted interruption into your day. But for me, this was a FaceTime live video of this man, let's say, massaging himself sexually on my phone. So, I realized I didn't recognize the number, but I sell real estate. And so it's not uncommon for me to have a number that comes up. They may have seen my number somewhere. Sometimes people accidentally hit FaceTime versus calling you. So I answered the phone. Of course, I was not expecting that. And there he was performing and talking his way through it. And also using my name. So he knew exactly who he was attempting to connect with. It was immediately very upsetting and startling for me. What made it worse was having my daughters there, because they then became subject to this, because when they saw my reaction, they grabbed the phone to see what was going on, and they were the ones who actually disconnected the call. And then he called back. He called back 2 more times before we had enough time to block the number from coming back in. This is just as bad. There's nothing any different in this and unwanted touching or unwanted comments. It is 100% harassment. If it's unwanted, it really doesn't matter to me what the act was. It's a violation. And it upset not just my entire day, it upset me emotionally for a while. We did call the police, and he did come by. He took a report, but it literally stopped there. I never heard anything else from it. There was never any follow-up from it. And so for me, never really any resolve. The only thing I could do to really protect myself is to say, when I see a phone number that comes up from FaceTime and I don't recognize it, don't answer the call. That's the only protection or recourse I had in the situation. It made me very unsettled. I couldn't sleep for, several nights after that. Like any woman who's been violated in any way, it upsets you at your core. It is not something you can just say, you can just shake it off. And, some people may say, well, you disconnect the call, what's the big deal? It's a huge deal, because I don't want to see your parts. I don't want to see you touching your parts. And I definitely don't want to see you touching your parts and using my name in the process. It makes you wonder, how much more information do they know about you? Do they know where you work? Do they know where you live? Because a lot of this is public information, just like my name is. And not any type of legal recourse made me feel instantly defeated. So I am glad that this is illegal. It should be, but it also should be for all ages as well.
Are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. So one of the questions that I had was, how did it make you feel? Was it like you're not empowered, you are helpless? And okay to use it in that manner. And then the second part or second question is, what was it that kept law enforcement from pursuing maybe harassment charges or some type of, other charge against this person, especially since it appears that they have a habit of doing this with other people?
Absolutely. And you did go out on my end. I'm not sure if you went out on everyone's end after the first part of your first question, but I did hear how did it make you feel? You truly do feel violated. I don't know a better word to describe it. I feel that something was taken from me, was stolen from me, that they had no right to take. And sometimes, that's your peace of mind, that's your emotional stability, that's your feeling of safety, that we all have a right. But in that moment, that was taken away from me. Why did they not pursue other charges? I don't know, because I did not get any follow up to it whatsoever. So they knew the person, he had previous charges. And then after me, he began to call other real estate professionals. So I wasn't the only one that day. We have like a private message board for realtors. And so I put a warning out there. And then other ladies started saying, oh my God, he just called me. Oh my God, he just called me. So he was really on a roll that day. And hopefully I was able to get the warning out so that the next person, recognized that number and didn't pick it up. But I don't know why they didn't go with any other charges. I think a lot of people feel it's not that big of a deal, just block the number, okay?
Right.
But they don't understand when you are targeted, when you are victimized, what it does to you. And blocking is after the fact. Blocking the phone number is after the damage has been done. So it's so much more to it than, oh, that's, just don't answer the number, block the number, what have you. The damage has already, been done. I don't want to see anything other than my husband. Okay. Not by mistake, not on purpose, and certainly not by someone, pushing that on me without my permission. And so it's 100% a violation. And I wish they would have pursued some additional charges, but it just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the additional charges may, or perhaps it was because you had a male officer investigating?
I hope that's not the case. Could a female be more sensitive and attentive? Possibly, but I think with proper training, and a lot of men have daughters, wives, and mothers, and so they should be more sensitive to these matters. Sometimes it may be a little bit harder for them to understand because, I would assume, I don't know, maybe there are some men who probably would feel the same way if something unwanted came, their way. They're family men and they're out with their kids, and someone just randomly decided to, FaceTime video something inappropriate. I don't think all men would say, oh my, well, my goodness, this is great. I'm sure they would be made to feel uncomfortable, and that is unwanted for them. They would probably feel a sense of being violated. So I hope that the lack of response was not because it was a male officer versus a female. But I think that's where sensitivity training comes in, and understanding. Well, I think that's where making these things law come in first. And then sensitivity training around these matters for male and female officers.
Right. I appreciate you answering those questions. I want to pivot and just the lack of, I guess, the lack of power that you feel at that time. Then you had your daughters with you, and so your daughters kind of experienced the violation. So was the officer sensitive to that even?
Yeah, he talked to all of us. I thought he did a great job with getting the information, helping us to kind of get back into that, your safe zone, you're in your home. These are some things that you can do. Here is my personal number. Here is my email. So at my home, the officer was great. It was just nothing after that.
Mhm.
So it does take a sense of your power away. And that doesn't feel good for anyone. Like I said, I own my own business. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. So there are a lot of aspects in my life that I can control, and that I do have power over. And when someone comes in and literally robs you of that, and there's no recourse, that just adds a layer, another layer of feeling defeated. Is like they actually that, like, it's okay, and the law says that it's okay, or at least it doesn't say that it's not okay, which is just as bad, it's worse. And so you really do feel like there's nothing I can do about this, other than, hey, just block the number. Like I said, the damage has been done by the time you get to that point, and there needs to be some accountability and some recourse.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with for this brief period. I know you have another engagement that you need to get to, but we are so appreciative of your time this evening. The community at the end of the conversation. So again, much. We're going to turn it over now to a brief video clip that we're going to with everyone. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for all that you're doing. Thank you.
I turn 18 in a year and 5 months.
I'll turn 18 in 14 months and 20 days.
I turn 18 in a year and 3 months.
I turn 18 in 9 months, and I'm so excited. I finally get to do all the adulting things that I want, like driving late or giving blood.
Finally, I'll be an adult and I'll get to go to college.
To pick and choose what college I want to go to, and actually be able to drive more than just one of my friends around.
And to be able to do whatever I want and have my own freedom.
But
do you know what I just found out?
Okay, so it's illegal to send unsolicited nudes, and that means dick pics from weirdos, to someone under the age of 18. Thank goodness.
It's a class 6 felony. You can get anywhere from 1 to 6 years in jail.
I mean, thank goodness. I don't know anyone who likes getting unsolicited nudes. Ew.
But once I turn 18, I have no legal way to hold that person accountable.
Anyone can send me any disgusting things that they want.
How is it that I'm protected now, but in 14 months and 20 days?
But in a year and 5 months?
But in 9 months, I won't be. This has to be fixed.
It's completely ridiculous.
That's crazy, and it has to be changed. I'm going to be watching the General Assembly in 2022, and I hope you do as well. And I expect lawmakers to do the right thing and protect people from cyber flashing.
Because how is it illegal to expose yourself in person, but legal online? It makes no sense.
Oh yeah, the other great thing about turning 18?
How could I forget my favorite part about turning 18?
I can vote.
Wow, that was really powerful. That's amazing.
I have to introduce the 4 young women who put that together. That was Grace, Sam, Avery, and Savannah in order of their appearance. And they really felt moved by this to share their thoughts. And they did it all themselves. So hats off to them. We are so excited that they were there to do that for us.
Absolutely.
I'll turn it back over to you, Tanja, to have our next guest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And next we will have, we're back on track to speak with Amanda. She is a family, she was introduced earlier. And so Amanda, we want to welcome.
Hi, you're going a little bit in and out, Tanja, but I'm going to do my best and I'll just,
Amanda.
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you all hear me? Can Jess hear me and everyone else? Amazing. Okay. So I am Amanda Survik-Johnston, and I am the CEO of Virginia Family Therapy. And for the past, I would say 10 or 15 years, I have been working with young women and adolescent girls, specifically, and my focus is really on teenage girl and young adult women development. And I've seen a lot in my therapy practice. I love what I do, and I love helping young women get where they are hoping to be able to go. So Tanja, can you hear me? You're frozen for me. Is she frozen for everybody? Okay, great. I'll just go, you know. So
I'll jump in. So, sorry.
I'm fine.
Go for it.
So one of the questions, because by the way, everyone, I did feed Tanja questions to ask me, so I can just answer them in the order in which I had her, you know, question me on them. So one of the questions we had talked about was kind of what kinds of virtual harassment are kids and teens and young women experiencing today? And I would say, by the way, I do not have tons of data. There is not tons of data on virtual harassment for women. It's not like there's a database out there that I know of where you can see statistically how much this is happening. So my experience is specifically from the girls and women that come and sit in my office, in my room, and choose to come to therapy. Also the girls and women that I talk to, because I engage in, you know, I like to talk to people about what's happening for them, and this does come up. So I think from my experience, I would say about 3 years ago, dick pics and sending nudes seemed to be more prevalent. So especially when kids were just getting access to the internet and there was more access to social media and specifically Snapchat, I would say that is when the increase of nudes really came about and people started talking about it. And talking about it a lot. I have a lot of moms and a lot of young women who come and say that they are frequently receiving nudes and frequently being requested to send nudes. And I have to have conversations with people all day long about what to do when someone requests a nude from you that you don't want to give it to. That's just a standard part of my therapy practice, sadly. I think recently, as people have realized how prevalent dick pics and nudes are, there has been a shift, thankfully. However, it's still not great. I was just speaking with a few people yesterday, and they were talking to me about a new type of what I consider virtual harassment, and they're calling it pickup lines. So she says instead of currently sending unsolicited dick pics, people are sending pickup lines to each other. And one such pickup line that she said to me was she had recently, frequently, I would say once a week, she said that she's getting this sent to her, which is roses are red, watches are gold, now get on your knees and do what you're told. So this is the kind of, this is what people are sending to people on Snapchat, on Instagram, probably not Facebook because they're too young for Facebook, through instant messenger and through their text messages pretty frequently. So I think in the past, it may have been more dick pics, more pictures, and now people are moving to words as well. And I think that in all instances, it likely reaches the case of virtual harassment. The next question.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I was sort of trying to process what you were saying, and I was like, man, even if that current law last year had passed, it wouldn't necessarily cover all of it, because we're reaching a point where we have to think further into the future. Like, what can technology do and what is it doing, and are we being protected against it? So sorry, I was sort of processing what you were saying, thinking of my children being like, huh, so I thought I was going to give you a cell phone in 9th grade, but you are really screwed now. So that's just, I mean, I think a lot of us, we have very sheltered lives and we don't really run into this as much. I don't have my phone number out there. It's not, I'm not in the public eye, so I don't experience this. And to hear such things happening is really unnerving. So sorry.
Well, and I know that we're speaking incidentally about people over 18. There are laws for people under 18. And we're speaking about people over 18, but you saw those young girls in that video. Their culture currently is what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden they're going to turn 18, and it will be the culture and the norm for this to continue, because it is so prevalent among the way people are living today. And I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think teenagers love telling their parents, hey, so-and-so sent me a dick pic, because of what you just said. They're going to get their phone taken away. So there's not quite the lines of communication between adults and teenagers and young women as much as we would like, because then they get their phone taken away. And we don't want to punish kids for that. So I think really we need to get ahead of the laws so that kids and young adults are not having these experiences.
And that sort of leads into my next question about currency that these pictures or this virtual harassment is leading us to. We're having all of these conversations about it, but are people sort of blackmailing each other with, like, how are they using it against one another?
So, and I was shocked by this when I heard it. By the way, I work with a range of teenagers. Some of them are women who have transitioned to men, so trans men. So they were young women at the time when I was talking to them about this. Some of them come from a range of socioeconomic statuses, a range of races. And also I do work with a range of genders. I do have males on my caseload that I talk to about this. So one of my higher socioeconomic status clients, and socioeconomic status is like how much money you have. So someone who came from a fair amount of money, and it was in a very well-protected environment, told me that among her friends, they all have a vault on their phone. So they have an app on their phone that is a vault that adults can't look into. And when they get nudes of someone sent to them, they put it in the vault, and they hold those pictures so that if they want to blackmail someone in the future, they have that nude saved. And they will use it for things such as getting homework. So someone would say, hey, I'm going to share that nude you sent me unless you give me your math homework so I can copy it today, which I was shocked by. I had no idea, but this is one story, right? This is one story, but what it highlights is the prevalence of this currency and the prevalence of this way of speaking to each other that we see among young women and young men, at least in my pocket of the world, which is Charlottesville, Virginia. And I can't imagine that it's significantly different in other places of the country, because phones and Snapchat and Instagram and FaceTime, those are anywhere you have phones.
This all sounds a little too risky as a parent of small children, and even as myself, I really feel that I'm well protected, but it just sounds like the risk of all of this information being out there is getting worse and worse. Can you expand on like what our culture is doing as we are allowing these things to go on?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And by the way, I'm not telling you this to scare you all. You can have very lovely and very healthy conversations with your kids about this. You know, one of the things that I really try to teach parents to do when you're raising a young woman is to have the conversation. And let them know how you handle that, right? So I do think, you know, the statistic is that 1 in 4 women have been sexually violated. I'm sure it's much higher as far as harassment. And you can have a very nice conversation with your daughters and with your young men about how to handle that can connect you in a healthy way with your kid. So you don't have to be worried as a parent. Yes, it's scary, and it can also help you get closer to your kids, just so you know. But I do worry, and this is, you know, Catina highlighted this. Catina's experience of her virtual harassment, which was so sad and so upsetting, really demonstrated for us the true risks that we as women have in our society. If 1 in 4 women have experienced a sexual trauma, I'm personally willing to bet it's likely higher. I don't, again, I don't know the exact statistic right now. But when you've experienced a trauma, other events that are close to that trauma will take your brain back to a place of trauma, right? So if you say you were raped, say you were violated in a way that felt really scary to you, and then all of a sudden someone sends you a picture of their penis, not only are you going to be offended by the picture of a penis, but your brain is going to tell you, I am so unsafe because of that rape that occurred to me or that harassment that occurred to me. And you are going to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode as a woman. And what happens to women, and you already heard Catina talk about it, she's not sleeping that night, she can't work, she isn't able to focus on her children. All of her body and all of her resources have been put into surviving that moment. I'm not saying that Catina is a survivor of a previous trauma, but what I'm saying is that you can see how these traumas can overlay and overlay and overlay on each other. And to me, not having laws that protect women is another way of oppressing us from meeting our financial, occupational, caregiving, individual roles that we would like, because so much of our energy is taken protecting ourselves from virtual harassment. At the same time, for young men, when there are no laws to tell them that this isn't okay, why should they stop? It's basic. Jess, you're talking about being a parent. We know that if our kids do something that we don't want them to do, you either punish them or you reinforce them for the opposite behavior. But if young men aren't getting punished for behaving this way, what's telling them to stop? So then they are allowed to go out and re-traumatize women across our country at their whim. Sorry, you've got me on a little soapbox here. But that's what worries me, is that no one is teaching the men that it isn't okay. And I think that I think many of them would like to know that it's not okay. I think many of them are genuinely, they don't know because no one has told them. And we need to give them that information so that they can be better people. That being said, it can also be women virtually harassing other women as well. Let me say that as well.
I think that's a really good point. It's that there aren't any boundaries for anybody. So boundaries are endless at this point. Catina, unfortunately, was a victim of this and has to survive it each day. And as you mentioned, she has to relive a little bit each time probably a phone call comes through. I don't know if it happens, but for me, I would feel that way. And so if our young children are seeing this happen on their phones, at school, sharing pictures and whatnot, and using it as currency, what is our culture saying about how we appreciate one another and how we value one another? So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I think Tanja is back with us, so she is the expert at this. So I'm going to invite her back into the spotlight, and I think she might have one last question for you. Oh no, she may have dropped off again. Oh, there she is. It's like my perfect day.
Thank you. Thank you for spotlighting me again, Jess. I appreciate that. And I was listening to the conversation. I mean, I wanted to dig into, well, what can we do? You know, like, how do we empower ourselves? And I think one of the ways to do that is by having laws in place that really help to do that, help to empower us. Because when you're traumatized, and you're already feeling helpless, and then to not have anyone to have your back, not even in the legal setting, that's even more of a trauma. It's another form of trauma, because where do you turn? How do you handle that? I think that I don't know if Jess covered this question or not, but they, in talking about nudes and how it can be currency, did you all review that?
We did.
Okay. So I just think that how do we empower, until we get the laws changed, how can women and girls empower themselves if they're faced with something like this? I mean, this happens quite a bit, unfortunately.
You know, I think that it comes from older women, right? Because I think we all know that we have had we've had an experience, maybe not a virtual harassment, but we've had an experience where someone has touched us or said something to us in a way that we did not like. And the way we learn to handle it in a healthy way is by talking to other people who have had that experience and learning the coping strategies and coming together and having these conversations.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things as a therapist that moves me so much is that when something happens to a young woman, and she's heard the story. She's like, if a boy touches me a way I don't want to be touched, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And then when it actually happens, she doesn't respond that way because she's so scared or she's so overwhelmed and she doesn't know what to do. And she feels badly about herself that she didn't know, she didn't respond. She thinks she's not who she thought she was, right? But when we have older generations of women saying, no, like that's okay, that's why it's hard, and you're going to learn next time, and this is part of the process, and we do it together, that's how we empower them. Because already I feel better talking to you all about this, right? Catina has opened my eyes to so many important things that I'm going to take back to the women that I work with. And people are not having these conversations, and here you are helping us. I think this is how we do it.
I agree. And I think also helping law enforcement to understand that it's not something that, you know, the mindset of, well, you know, I mean, what's the big deal? Or it's, you know, it happens all the time. He's at it again. But really taking a different attitude that, you know, someone's been violated here. And my duty is to serve and protect, because I'll tell you, when you need protection, you want, you know, you're dialing 911, right? Or you know, so you want help, and you want law enforcement when they come into position to understand what it is that you've been through, and that is not just something that's okay, you know, well, it's no big deal. So I think also doing the training and pivoting the mindset is going to be really, really empowering and helpful too.
And I liked what Catina said. She thinks those police officers have moms, have daughters, has wives. So we need to be talking to the police officers, letting them know. We need to be talking to all the people in our world about it. It isn't something to be ashamed of. It's not our fault that it happened to us. If we can help more people understand what's happening and the impact that it has, I'm hopeful that we can begin to make changes.
I think this is a good first step towards that, definitely in Virginia. So I want to thank you again for being on the panel and for giving your information, how we can uplift and empower the community. So, and this doesn't just happen to, you know, girls and women. I mean, you know, it's open for everyone, you know, that, you know, when you are violated in a manner that something unsolicited comes to you, it can be whatever gender you identify with. So
absolutely.
I need to make that clear as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Any closing words, any parting words that you'd like to
No, just that I'm so glad you all are doing this, and this is so helpful, and I think it's important. So I'm glad someone is shining a spotlight on it.
Absolutely. Do we have any questions just in the chat or anything from the audience right now that we want to ask?
Actually, I do have a
ahead.
question. Amanda, thank you, because I am a mother of 2 of those teenagers in that video. And so I'm like, we're right there right now. I'm going to be asking them about the vault later. But you know, what, and Tanja, this is probably to you as well. What responsibility do these tech companies have on any of this? I mean, I'm imagining too, like, you know, all of the dating sites, they probably have, you know, monitors and regulations, stipulations about what can be shared, et cetera. Is there any kind of, has that been brought up as far as what responsibility tech companies have? Thank you.
But can I just jump in for a second? I think it's the what do you call it? The atmosphere, especially for dating sites. It is certainly something that's part of the dating community, because if people feel so free to share this, just all of a sudden you're going to get a pic. Well, we're unsolicited. It's the is the community, is the what's accepted
Mhm.
in those communities. And so I think dating sites and you know, internet providers or servers need to have stricter regulations. I think just because you're on a dating site doesn't mean that you want new pictures.
I also think there is some, you know, I think Facebook was in Congress recently talking about child pornography. So I think there's beginning to be some attention, but I do think that technology is always a little bit ahead of where the laws are. And so, you know, I'm sure your teenagers, as soon as you put something on like their screen time, they've figured out a way around it and they're going to use a different app. So that is one way to deal with it. And I think there is significant, there's significant responsibility there, and it's going to be hard for the laws to keep up with that.
Right. Where's the moral conscience is one of the things that we have in the chat. And I think that needs to be addressed. It needs to, social media should have a moral conscience and a compass to determine what's going to be accepted or not.
Mm-hmm.
One of the comments was that the creator of Bumble was very active in guiding the California legislators in creating their law. So that's true. And we might.
I was just going to say, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, Tanja, is everybody familiar with Bumble and how they operate?
Mm-hmm.
I know, Amanda, I'm sure you are. So Bumble is a dating app. The CEO is a woman, and she is the whole philosophy of Bumble is that the woman or the female or the person that identifies as female gets to initiate the conversation. So the entire thing is in the woman's control, rather than getting bombarded with messages from men that she does not want. So she puts all of the control with the woman to initiate any kind of conversation or dating or etc. It's very successful, and she's actually a billionaire, the CEO. So it's working.
I have a question. You mentioned on the thing, I see California legislators. Does California have a dick pic law?
Yes.
Yes, they do.
The creator of Bumble was very active in guiding the CA legislators in creating their law. Do they have a dick pic law, and is it something we can champion and copy and say, look, if California's doing it, why can't we? I mean, do we have a copy of that law?
We do.
How's it look?
It's something that I think would be excellent to pattern
Okay.
Virginia legislation on. So that's something that we're looking into kind of as a resource. And Bumble, we actually reached out to the creator of Bumble to try to have her on as well, but she's a little busy. So
Yeah. Can you send a copy of that legislation so we can all take a peek at it at some point, maybe afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a great question. So at this point, we're going to pivot over to Katie Hornog if we don't have any other questions from the chat. And thank you again, Amanda, for being here and for sharing your time and your expertise. We are
Glad
greatly
to be
appreciative.
here.
Thank you. So next up,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say next up we have Katie coming to the spotlight.
Oh, it's always nice to be virtual where we can't like give the little winks and the nods like we do in person.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me this evening. And thank you for teeing up this very important conversation. I think at the end of the day, for me, this is a situation that it's just so common sense that if somebody can do something to you in person, why should they, if they can't do that to you in person because it's illegal, why should they be allowed to get into your cell phone and be in your purse doing that same thing? And so I really appreciate everybody talking through this one. It came up first in the General Assembly this past session in January of 2021, and it passed the House unanimously. And as you probably know, in this divided time, not everything passes unanimously in our chambers. And especially our House is the more raucous chamber. And to see it pass unanimously there and then go over to the Senate Judiciary Committee, where there was a lot of hemming and hawing by some men who were very concerned that what if somebody just thought that an unsolicited dick pic is flirting, and now it's gonna, hurt him and, ruin his reputation, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I think a lot of the conversation needs to be had as far as this is just not acceptable. And no, you don't ever want to be in the position of somehow really helping a perpetrator continue to harass people, that is actually the problem. Like, the problem is not that maybe some innocent bystander who's sending pictures of his stuff around is going to be the poor guy. Like, we need to evolve as a society to start focusing on who's actually doing the thing. And have that be the focus, like who did this and was that an acceptable thing to do? Not, oh, you just need to learn how to delete and move beyond. So we're hoping that by providing a venue for conversation and education and observation on this issue, that we will help the General Assembly understand that this is something that women in Virginia care about, and this is something that is impacting women in Virginia. The Senate was kind of, so Delegate Kelly Commerce Fowler is the delegate who carried it in the House last year. And she was trying pretty hard to work with the Senate Judiciary Committee and basically said, I'm open to any changes. We just have to address this issue. And they kind of gave her one set of things, and then they told her another thing, and she was open to any of their changes. And at the end of the day, they just killed it. They were not interested in it going forward. And we actually saw that in a number of different bills that would have been pro-women, that they had a real hard time making it out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And so this next year, we're hopeful that in 2022, with more people really paying attention to this, with some advocacy, I'm not sure there was a big advocacy push last time around, as well as some more consensus building. Next session, which is 2 weeks from today, Delegate Kelly Commerce Fowler and Senator Scott Survik, as well as hopefully somebody from the AG's office, will be discussing kind of the language that was proposed, the concerns that were raised, and it should be a very good and open conversation about how we move this forward. What is it that the law does need to have in it? What are the litigation concerns? Because, just because you create a law and say that this is now illegal doesn't mean that it will hold up in court. So obviously our laws and the proposals that we want to stand behind have to be meaningful. They have to be strong enough to withstand judicial scrutiny. And so I think it'll be a very vibrant conversation 2 weeks from tonight, with kind of some pros and cons and kind of kicking around some of the potential language. We should definitely have a copy of that California law available to everybody who's attending next time. Because that, at some point, the question needs to be to our Virginia legislators, if other states can do this, why can't we? And, other states have good court systems just like we do. And, all of their laws have to go through the same, kind of review that ours would. So it seems to me that what's missing here is the actual consensus building and the advocacy. And I think we are an excellent group to move forward together on those things. So that's kind of it from where I'm sitting, and I'm really looking forward to 2 weeks from tonight. So, and we will be replaying a little bit from tonight's session for the legislators who are not here with us tonight, so that they can hear that the 17-year-olds are like, wait a minute, in a year, I'm suddenly unprotected, and that's not okay. And I think they should also be hearing a little bit from, a woman who is having, like her kids saw that, it's not just her. My big question is, well, can charges be pressed because the kids saw it, even though he wasn't intending for that? So, because as we know, minors are much more protected than, what do we call ourselves? Majors? Are we majors now?
Katie, I want to just jump in there for just a second and just, one of the issues that they brought up with the legislation from last year was that the questions were focused around how difficult it would be to prove a nude photo was or wasn't sent maliciously. But I think also when you have situations where there's a video or it's FaceTime, and then it's gone, how do you prove that that was actually something that was done? And I think we have to
yeah.
look at the evidence piece of it, like make sure that that's
Yep.
strong or stronger, so that there's no question about proving malicious intent or proving the evidence that it even happened in the first place.
Yeah, I keep thinking we just need to say, what are the flasher laws and how can those be moved onto the more modern platform? Because it's not just the guy in the park with a raincoat anymore.
Right. Yeah, true. Well, thank you. I'd like to invite everyone and to come out. Katie mentioned that we're going to have another session on September the 23rd at 6 p.m. So if you're here, then I think there's a link that has all of them listed there. And so sign up for that, register for that, share that with friends, share that with young people as well, with their parental consent, because it's something that I think they should be in on the discussion to a large degree, because they're our future and they're the ones that are going to be impacted by things that hit them as an adult or as a major. So I'd like to turn it back over to Jess and to see if we have any words from our executive board, from Madam President, and we will close it out after that.
Thank you all for coming. I think what Tanja and Katie and Amanda and Catina all brought forward is that we need to continue these conversations. And I'm really proud to be a member of NWPC VA, because we are having these really difficult conversations and we have been having them in our small circles, and now we're able to have them across Virginia. So this organization is incredibly important to move forward the issues that are really defining us as women in today's culture and defining the next generation that comes after us. So the laws need to move forward as we are moving forward. So please, I just dropped the website into the chat so that you can join our next session. As Katie mentioned, it's in 2 weeks, and we will have the 2 delegates and hopefully either the AG or the SG. And we would love for you all to attend. Please bring a friend. This is an issue that we really need to, as Amanda said, talk to other people about. It's not just us who need to talk about it. We need to start sharing with our friends. We need to start sharing with our grandmothers, with our neighbors. So please share. Everyone is welcome. Our doors are open for everyone to join. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us on the NWPC email. If you have questions you want to ask some of the delegates next session, we would be open to that. I think that's a great way to sort of start the conversation going. And we would love to have you join us there as well. So thank you so much for coming. We are so excited to kick this off session 1, and we have 3 more sessions to go. Have an awesome evening, and everyone be safe.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.